Ian, could you move a little bit to your right?
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Right there.
That's good. Right there. Oh, perfect.
Great.
That looks perfect.
You look great, Ian.
Thank you, guys.
30 seconds.
There it is, the selection order for the 2019 NBA Draft. Zion Williamson and Ja Morant expected to go 1-2, but after that we could see some fireworks and possibly some franchise-altering trades involving NBA superstars. We've already seen that a little bit, right? As we welcome you here inside our NBC Sports NBA Draft Special. I'm Amy Fiddle, and I'm joined by our NBC Sports NBA insider, Tom Haberstroh. We are bringing you no commercials, streaming it all right now for the next half hour or so. We're going to go around the country as well to check in with our host of NBA reporters for the latest intel on tonight's draft. But it's not just about the 60 players that are going to hear their names called tonight, right? We're also going to delve into how free agency and the trade market could impact this very draft. We want you to use the hashtag NBADraftNBC. Make sure you tweet that. Send it out on Facebook, Instagram, everywhere, so Tom and the rest of our reporters around the country can see it, get a little draft questions answered. So let's start with it. The Pelicans, #1 pick. We know they've got a couple more picks. We'll talk about that in a second. But they're basically held hostage by Anthony Davis, his trade request last season. They've moved on from him. Now they have a chance to get another franchise player in Duke Zion Williamson, and it's no surprise, he's going to go 1. Is he a no-doubt NBA superstar right now?
In my book, he's the best prospect since LeBron James. He is better than Anthony Davis coming into the league. He's better than DeMarcus Cousins, another skilled big coming into the NBA. Off the charts statistically. Physically, you watch him play. He's got a bunch of highlights with his, a steal there or a dunk. He's incredible. But the skills there are much better than what the highlights suggest. He's got a three-point shot. He actually shot better from three-point land this season than R.J. Barrett and his teammate Cam Reddish. Percentage-wise, shot 34%. And he's just a great passer, too. I think even if his vertical dropped 12 inches, he'd still be the #1 pick in the draft because he's that skilled. He is a supercharged Blake Griffin. I think he's just an incredible athlete and also much more skilled than people give him credit for.
The real deal at #1. It's been a while since we've seen one of those. Well, the Lakers, as we know, made the first major move of this offseason. The reports are that they acquired Anthony Davis from the Pelicans in exchange for, follow along here, Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, 3 first-round picks, including the #4 tonight, and they have the right to pick swap 2 seasons. In 2 seasons, they get 2 more picks. This is a crazy deal. What's the next move, though? Because LA needs more help than just LeBron and AD.
Yeah, it's amazing that they got Anthony Davis, but they still might have bungled this deal a little bit, Amy, because they only have $24 million in cap space right now, which means they cannot get a max guy like Kawhi Leonard or Kyrie Irving. If they called up today and said, we'd like to come to the Lakers, let's do this, they don't have enough cap space to sign them. Wow. So right now they're going to try to get Kawhi Leonard. They're going to try to get Kyrie Irving if Kawhi doesn't work out. They need three-point shooting. They need defense. And Kawhi Leonard does both of those things. But the question is, does he want to go back to the West Coast after winning a championship? And if he does go to LA, are the Lakers the team that he wants to go to?
Yeah, that is the big question out there. Maybe it's the Clips. We'll have to wait and find out. The #4 pick tonight should be interesting. It's going to be announced as the Lakers pick, but the Lakers are going to either be picking for New Orleans or maybe even another team if the Pelicans end up trading that pick. So do you think New Orleans picks ultimately at 4, or do they trade it?
I actually think they might keep it because I think that the market for the #4 pick in this down draft, I think there isn't a home run #4 pick. This isn't like 2003 where you had Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh there. It isn't like last year where he had so many amazing players there at the 4 or 5 pick. So I think it's going to be a dry market for that #4 pick, and I think actually New Orleans will keep it tonight. That's where my sense is. But man, do not expect Bradley Beal to be traded for that number 4 pick. I'm told that he will stay put.
Yeah, there's a lot of people down in D.C. maybe thinking that might happen. Well, let's go up to New York, where the Knicks had the number 3 pick tonight. The latest on what they might be thinking, we go to SNY's Ian Begley in New York City. Ian, thanks so much for joining us. You know, free agency is just 10 days away. The Knicks are pursuing Kevin Durant, but it hit a bit of a snag, of course, when KD ruptured his Achilles, Game 5 of the finals. The injury has that changed plans for the Knicks and Durant?
The Knicks are still going to be aggressive there. They're still going to make Durant an offer. They're very comfortable with that, as far as I'm told. The factor here, though, is what Golden State is comfortable with, because Kevin, based on where he is with this injury and his age, if Golden State says to him, hey, we're willing to give you the full 5-year max guaranteed, I have to think that's tough to turn down. And remember, the Knicks can only offer 4 years at max money, but less dollars than Golden State. So it gives Kevin every incentive to return to Golden State if the Warriors do make that offer, and that will put the Knicks in a tough spot. I wouldn't expect them to be aggressive with any kind of quote-unquote Class B, Class C free agents. If they strike out on Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard, I would expect them to kind of punt the summer and go along with this young core, which is expected to include R.J. Barrett, and then see what they can do again in the summer of 2020.
Yeah, you mentioned R.J. Barrett there. Is there any doubt in your mind that that's who they're taking? Because I know there's been a couple of speculation, a couple of reports out there thinking that might go for a Jarrett Culver type.
Well, they brought in Culver for a workout. They brought in Darius Garland for a workout on Wednesday. They brought in Kobe White for a workout today. And that tells me that they are very much open to the possibility of trading down. I think it would have to be a significant offer for the Knicks to pull the trigger on a trade down. But I think they're listening. I think they're open to listening. And if they get blown away by an offer, they've done their due diligence on guys like Culver and Garland and Kobe White, so they'd be comfortable with any of those players if they were to fall to the picks that they would have traded for. But I think everybody, agents, opposing teams, people that talk to the Knicks, expects the Knicks to take R.J. Barrett at 3 if he is there.
Ian, thanks so much. Ian Begley from SNY for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll check in with you throughout the day. I know it's going to be a busy one for you and night. Thanks so much, Ian.
Thank you.
All right, you know, the Kevin Durant deal going to the Knicks, that's been rumored for months. I mean, it was like, I think even before the season started, he got tired of answering. Is he happy there out in Golden State? But can the Knicks give a max player to a contract who's probably going to miss all of next season? I mean, I know it's Kevin Durant, Tom, but is he worth it?
You know, I don't think Kevin Durant is going to leave Golden State this summer. The expectation was before the injury that he was going to go to the New York Knicks for a 4-year deal. But I think with the injury, a torn Achilles is just about the worst injury you could have as an NBA player. I think the odds are that he signs a 5-year max with the Golden State Warriors. But keep this in mind. The salary cap rules they do not allow Kevin Durant to sign a 5-year max with the New York Knicks, as Ian mentioned. So I think what might happen is a sign-and-trade, a delayed sign-and-trade, where Kevin Durant signs with the Golden State Warriors a 5-year max, and then in 6 months the rules allow him to be traded after that to the New York Knicks halfway through his rehab. So watch out for that as a delayed sign-and-trade with Kevin Durant going to the New York Knicks after he rehabs.
Still gets the security, obviously, of the longer deal, and then gets the Knicks. We'll see if it happens. It is a summer of uncertainty for the Celtics. They didn't get Anthony Davis, and they might watch both, maybe, Kyrie Irving and Al Horford leave in free agency. So let's go up to Massachusetts. We're joined by Sherrod Blakely of NBC Sports Boston. Sherrod, always good to see you. You know, Danny Ainge, he's a master of this. We know that he works the offseason like nobody's business. Where does he go from here now that he missed out on AD?
Well, you missed out on AD. You're probably going to lose Kyrie, and you're probably going to lose Al. So there's only one direction you can go, and that's up, because right now you are at, frankly, as low as you've been since he's been around here in terms of having quality and watching that quality go away. This is an important draft for the Celtics, not necessarily because of the players that they could potentially procure through the draft, but more so what can they do with these picks and the assets that they still have available. This is the one draft where I think Danny Ainge really has to think long and hard about pulling the trigger on a deal if he believes that he can do so and keep this team in the conversation as a title contender, which, to be candid with you, I just don't think that they're going to be able to do with the assets they have or the picks.
You mentioned the picks. Celtics have 3 picks in the first round tonight, 14, 20, and 22, because of course they do. Do you expect any or all of those to be used in a trade? How do you think this divvies up tonight?
I think if Danny Ainge has his way, at least one, probably two of those picks will be going elsewhere. This is a draft where they're picking. You're just not going to find a guy that's going to come in and make a significant impact on your team. And frankly, when you look at the losses that the Celtics are anticipated having, you're going to need to come away with this draft, whether it's with the picks you make or whether it's a package that brings in an established player. The Celtics, this is an important day for the Boston Celtics as far as their franchise going forward in terms of whether they're going to be relevant and in the conversation as a title contender or whether they're just going to fall back to the middle of the pack, where when you look at where they are relative to the East, that's pretty much where they are at this point.
Never a dull moment. It's going to be a very busy day, night, and continuing off season for you, Sherrod. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. All right, Tom, the Celtics have a lot going on, and as Sherrod mentioned, not all of it's good because they could be kind of in that middle pack where they don't want to fall. What are you hearing what's going on with them?
Well, don't be surprised if they start to, put the feelers out for, a big type of deal like Chris Paul. You see the reports out of Chris Paul in Houston that they're feuding, James Harden and Chris Paul aren't getting along. Well, what's interesting about that is if Kyrie leaves, that opens up a spot for a point guard to come in, and they have Gordon Hayward's contract that they could trade over to Houston. But I don't think it's likely, but that does, from a cap standpoint, that trade does work. But I think they're going to go back to 2018 when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they just add Gordon Hayward and just do a reset. It is a really bad couple weeks for the Boston Celtics, but they do know they've got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown waiting in the wings.
And 3 first-round picks. That's nothing to sneeze at right there. After going all in with a pair of massive trades, the Sixers took the world champion Raptors to 7 games. They're the only team to do that this postseason. Question, though, has to be asked. Will the Sixers sign Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris to max contracts and run it back? That is what they're calling the hashtag out there. So let's go to Sixers headquarters in Camden, New Jersey, where our Paul Hudrick of NBC Sports Philadelphia joins us. Paulie, always good to see you. We're 10 days away, as we were talking about earlier, from the start of free agency. Elton Brand, this is his first free agency that he gets to run. Do you think he plans to run it back with both Butler and Harris?
I mean, all the indications have been, even since they made the trades, that they wanted to run it back, that they didn't view Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris as rental players. They viewed them as pieces that could be a fit for the future. So I don't see any reason why they would deviate from that plan. As you mentioned, they take the Raptors to Game 7, a couple bounces, a legitimate backup center, perhaps an extra hand washing or a Purell bottle away from maybe advancing beyond that. So to me, the way the postseason unfolded with the Raptors winning, to me that just gives them more reason to run it back and re-sign Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris.
You mentioned the playoffs, and yes, washing your hands is always important. That's for everybody at home, too. We saw the Sixers, their lack of depth, come into play at various points during their postseason. Do you think they can get a guy at 24 who can give them some minutes in May and maybe June and be an actual contributor in the playoffs next season?
When Elton Brand spoke to us Tuesday, that's what he said. He said he wanted a guy who can crack the top 8 immediately. He said he wanted to give Brett Brown a guy that he could look down on the bench and say, hey, this guy has this skill, whether it's shooting, whether it's defense, whatever it is, he has this one skill, and I can count on that. When you look at where the Sixers are at 24, there are guys who can certainly fit that. Cameron Johnson from North Carolina, that's a guy getting a lot of buzz for the Sixers at 24. Excellent shooter, could fit in right away as a guy who could just provide spacing for Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, no matter what happens otherwise with the roster. You look at a guy that I personally love in Carson Edwards, the guard from Purdue. Again, another guy who's got logo range, tremendous scorer. Matisse Thybulle from Washington is another guy, a Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. Could definitely squeeze right in. If he could shoot a little bit higher level like he did earlier in his college career, could fit a little bit better. But certainly I think, at 24 and then also, again, at 33 and 34, they could find guys that could fit this rotation immediately.
Yeah, they got those 4 second-rounders as well coming up early. Paul Hudrick from NBC Sports Philadelphia, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Tom, Sixers have to think about, when you're talking about max contracts, giving one of those to Ben Simmons. They already have Joel Embiid on a max deal. So with that in mind, your 2 superstars, maxing those guys out, does it make sense for them to max out Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris? So much money tied into 4 guys.
Yeah, but they're worth it. These are all all-star caliber players. Tobias Harris could be an all-star. The thing that I always come back to is The continuity that the Philadelphia 76ers can have going into next season if they run it back is something that no one else in the league is going to have. I mean, you look at the Los Angeles Lakers, the Brooklyn Nets, even Toronto could be losing Kawhi Leonard. That continuity, bringing back the crew, I think is going to be a real advantage. Keep in mind, that five with Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris in the playoffs had the best plus-minus, plus 98. No lineup in the NBA was better this postseason than that starting lineup with J.J. Redick. If they bring it all back, they add a guy like Matisse Thybulle. I love that player for them at 24. They can step in right away. And also Cam Johnson, great shooter.
A name that's been thrown out there, so I got to ask you, and we heard this Sherrod talk about that the Celtics could be losing Al Horford. He has already said that they are not on the same page, Al Horford and the Celtics, as far as getting a deal. Is a guy like Horford someone you could see here in Philadelphia?
Absolutely. Actually, yesterday I spoke with the GM who I asked, do you think that Al Horford's going to leave Boston? He said, I don't think so. I think he's going to go back to Boston, but if he doesn't, keep an eye on the Philadelphia 76ers as an insurance policy on Joel Embiid. Keep his minutes down, keep his games played down. You saw what Kawhi Leonard did this year when he had all those rest days. Al Horford doing that for Joel Embiid could be huge for his health going into the playoffs as long as he washes his hands.
All the Sixers fans are so excited right now because they've watched for 2 years Al Horford just eat everyone's lunch on the Sixers. That guy is a really good player, so that'll be interesting to watch. And Purell, just invest into it, right? A little hand washing. Now to a couple of teams who are picking in the top 10 tonight. So we start in Chicago, where the Bulls are getting ready for their number 7 overall pick. Mark Shanowski of NBC Sports Chicago joining us. Mark, thanks for being here. The Bulls have a nice young core: Zach LaVine, Otto Porter, Lauri Markkanen, Wendell Carter. But none of those guys, as good as they might be, are a point guard. So do you think the Bulls are going to get their point tonight, the point of the future?
Well, the Bulls head of basketball operations, John Paxson, has been very open since the season came to a close, saying we need to upgrade at the point guard position. They've been disappointed with what they've got from Chris Dunn for the 2 years he's been in a Bulls uniform. So whether it's the draft or free agency, we're going to see 1, maybe 2 new point guards on the Bulls roster. The problem is, in tonight's draft, my projection is that both of the point guards the Bulls are interested in, Darius Garland and Kobe White, could be gone before the 7th pick. So then they have to figure out what to do. Do they take a wing where they're already pretty well set with Otto Porter Jr. and Chandler Hutchison, or do they try to trade back? The Bulls have had Sekou Doumbouya in. They've had Jackson Hayes in. If they could trade down with Atlanta, maybe pick up a couple of picks, that might be the direction they go if they can't get a point guard at 7.
It'll be interesting to watch. Any other players that you think they might be targeting even later or in a trade?
Well, I think right now that they're looking to free agency. They have about $20 million in cap space, and they really want to solidify the bench, which took a hit last year because of all the injuries, and they had a number of G League call-ups that were in rotation roles. So I think they'll utilize that second-round pick. They'll look to free agency to add some veterans. But right now, the way the draft shapes up, they're probably looking at either DeAndre Hunter or Cam Reddish at 7, and I'm not sure the Bulls love either one of those players. So I think they might be involved in the sweepstakes to trade up to 4 to try to get Darius Garland, or maybe trade back if both of the point guards are gone by the time they get to 7.
Mark, we're going to see if they get that point guard of the future tonight. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to the Washington Wizards, who have the 9th overall selection and a new direction as well after firing longtime general manager Ernie Grunfeld earlier this offseason. So Grunfeld's eventual replacement, whoever that may be, will have to contend with John Wall's massive 4-year, $171 million extension. That kicks in this upcoming season. Oh, by the way, Wall might miss this upcoming season entirely after rupturing his left Achilles tendon in February. He turns 29 in September. The Wizards have to hope that he regains some of that all-star form when he does come back. The Wizards have another all-star guard in Bradley Beal coming off a career season. So, Tom, do you think there's a chance that Beal is on the move, just trying to maybe jumpstart any kind of rebuild down in D.C.?
I'm told no. He is not on the trading block. No GM that I've talked to or any sources around the league have heard his name being floated by the Washington Wizards. And it makes a lot of sense. This guy is 25 years old. He's a 2-time All-Star, and he's under contract for 2 more years. It doesn't make any sense from my perspective to move him tonight at the NBA draft. It would, in my opinion, make a lot of sense for him to be on the trading block come July 2nd, July 3rd, after free agency is done and all those free agents choose their spots, there's going to be a lot of teams that are looking in for star level talent. I think the price that the Wizards would get in return for Bradley Beal is going to go way up once the free agency begins.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to hear his name quite a bit this summer. All right, for more on the Wizards, let's go to NBC Studios at 30 Rock in New York City. And that is where we find NBC Sports Washington's Chris Miller. C-Mill, good to see you. Wizards, they have yet to hire a successor for GM, so there is no one in place. Is that going to preclude them from making a major trade tonight because they don't have a GM?
Absolutely not. Ted Leonsis and interim GM Tommy Shepard have been ultra aggressive in the prospects coming into Washington, especially the last couple of weeks when you think of Keldon Johnson. Amy, I know you know a little something about Keldon Johnson. North Carolina's Kobe White, and also Nasir Little was just in town 2 days ago. So they've been very aggressive in doing their interviews and going about the business of doing basketball business. So I don't think that's going to preclude them from doing anything tonight. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised for a guy like Kobe White to come into town on Monday and work out. Was kind of a head scratcher for me because when you look at all these mock drafts, he's supposed to be either going to Phoenix or Chicago, and the fact that he came to Washington led me to think that maybe he has not been given a promise, and if that's the case, he would be the top pick for me at 9 if he's available.
Absolutely. Yes, Keldon Johnson, he can play a little bit. I watched him a smidge, just a little bit.
Just
a few times. This is the first time that the Wizards are picking actually out of the top 10 or in the top 10 since they drafted Otto Porter 3rd overall in 2013. So it's a little bit of uncharted territory for them recently anyway. So we take this question from Andrew Carter on Twitter, and make sure that you are using the hashtag NBA Draft NBC, and you can get your questions answered as well. If the Wizards, he asks, stay at 9, who should they draft? Should they draft someone who can have an immediate impact or maybe a project with a higher ceiling that's going to pay off?
This is a team that lost 50 games last year, and they have 9 roster spots available. I feel like they have to hit a home run with this pick, Amy, at 9. And if you hit a home run, that means that player has to be in the rotation this year. And again, I talked about Kobe White. I'm a huge Cam Reddish fan. I feel like what he could do on the basketball court is special. I know a lot of people question his motor. I also look at a guy like Keldon Johnson, Nasir Little, and Sekou Doumbouya, the international player from France, is someone I think down the road could have the chance to be a really good NBA player. But for me, at the top, if the Wizards draft at 9, if Kobe White again is there at 9, if not, if Cam Reddish available, I would take him.
Yeah, plenty of good options, it seems like, for the Wizards in their rebuild. Thanks so much, C-Mill. We appreciate it. Chris.
No problem.
Well, after 5 straight trips to the Western Conference Finals and 3 titles, what does the future hold for the Golden State Warriors after both Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson suffered just brutal, heartbreaking injuries in the NBA Finals? The Warriors are also moving across the bay to San Francisco, and that's where we find NBC Sports Bay Area's Monty Poole. Monty, thanks for joining us. Yeah, I got to ask, how do you expect the Warriors to approach this offseason? It's a little bit uncharted territory for them over the last couple of years.
No doubt about it. This is the most uncomfortable offseason the Warriors have had under Steve Kerr, actually under the Joe Lacob and Peter Guber ownership. I guess you could say also it's intriguing because, yeah, the Durant and Thompson injuries really threw them for a loop. And so now you're looking at a team that has gone to 5 straight finals, won 3 of them, and had 5 All-Stars at one point this season. Next season, they're coming in with 2 at this point. Stephen Curry and Draymond Green are the only ones that are locked into the roster right now. And so the draft is going to be important to them, but they can't come back with 3 rookies and think that they're going to go anywhere. And Joe Lacob and Peter Guber, the standards are really high right now. They don't really do well if this team is going to be 41-41. They want to see a team in the playoffs with a chance to win. So they're already making moves now, draft-wise, and they will also have to do some things in free agency to add some veterans because, again, you want to have a mix of youngsters and veterans. This is not going to be a year that they will sacrifice.
You mentioned the 2 guys that they do have, the All-Stars, Steph Curry, Draymond Green. They're going to have this underdog role a little bit after being at the top. I mean, 5 straight Western Conference Finals. Is that something they can really kind of take ownership of and really relish?
I think they love it. Guys like Steph and Draymond in particular, these are 2 guys who came into the league with question marks. How good is this Steph Curry going to be? He looks awful frail. He's going to get hurt. He can't do this. All he can do is shoot. Well, he's disproved that theory. And now you look at Draymond Green, who was a 35 overall pick. That means 34 teams had a chance to grab him, or 34 choices were there maybe before he was picked. And he came into the league thinking, okay, you know what? I know every single person who was drafted before me. I'm going to make people pay for not taking me. And that's what he's kind of based his career on. That kind of drive has gotten him to where he is right now. So Steph Curry, Draymond Green, they love being the underdog. It's one of the reasons why they love to win games on the road, because in their minds, we just shut people up.
All right, Monty, we know it's early out there on the West Coast. We appreciate you joining us. Thanks for being here. All right, from the Warriors, we move to last season's other Western Conference finalists. We go up the coast to Portland, check in with Dwight James of NBC Sports Northwest. Dwight, thanks for being here. The Blazers, we know, haven't been able to get past Golden State. Not many have, to be honest. But the Warriors may not be as significant a hurdle as they've been in years past for the Trail Blazers. So do you think they have like a specific goal in mind this offseason that, yes, we need to check this box?
Well, Amy, I think for sure they do. And we've seen the same thing happen now about 3 years in a row to them in the playoffs. They just don't have the kind of front court shooting that they need to have to keep the court spread for their two guards. And they're going to have to find somebody up front who could make a three-point shot, particularly a corner three, which isn't that difficult, but they have not gotten production from their front court in the postseason at all. And I think that's the first thing they have to deal with in the offseason.
Is it possible with the 25th pick that they look for a guy in the front court that could be the perimeter shooter and a little bit of that guy that you just described?
You know, Amy, I think they'd like to, but the philosophy here has always been you take the best player there, the player with the highest NBA upside, and then you have a valuable asset moving forward, even if he doesn't fit your particular need. But I think there is one player who might be available to them at 25 who could do both. And I think I like Cameron Johnson out of North Carolina, who can really shoot the ball, makes tough shots. That's the kind of player they need. It's all a matter of whether or not he's still going to be there when they pick.
All right, Dwight, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Amy.
All right, from a perennial playoff team in Portland to a Kings team hoping to join that mix next season, we welcome James Ham of NBC Sports Bay Area from the Golden One Center in Sacramento. James, thanks for joining us. The Kings do not have a first-round pick tonight. That's a change for them in the last couple of years. But they do already have a great young core from those previous drafts. What type of player do you think they're going to try to add to the mix of De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, and Marvin Bagley?
You know, this is the first time the Sacramento Kings haven't had a first-round pick and haven't been in the lottery since 2007. And they only have 3 second-round picks. So we're looking at 40, 47, and 60. They're going to have a tough time finding someone who can step on the floor and help them right away from any of those picks. I expect the Kings to be extremely active today. They have a ton of cap space, and there's all kinds of options to either sell or trade or move those picks in different ways. So I expect them to be active today.
Active today and probably active in the offseason, as we saw Harrison Barnes opting out of his player option. He's going to become a free agent. Do you think he's going to be back in Sacramento?
I think he's going to be back in Sacramento, and that's because the Kings are extremely confident that he will be back in Sacramento. He had an option there that he could have taken at $25 million for this season. He could have even signed an extension with the Kings after accepting that option. Instead, he decided to tear up his contract, and they're hoping to have a better budget-friendly deal with him worked out that's long-term. Maybe that works out, maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't, they have a huge hole to fill on the front line.
All right, James, thanks for joining us. We know it's early out there. We appreciate it very much. All right, Tom, I got to ask you as we wrap up, and that is the fastest 30 minutes. The good news, we're doing it right again at 3 o'clock Eastern. But in the last couple of days, we've seen some blockbuster deals. We already saw the one for Anthony Davis, Mike Conley getting traded to Utah, and the Grizzlies making off with a whole host of players and picks. Do you expect another major deal tonight, something like that?
Yeah, watch out for Kevin Love in Cleveland. He signed a 5-year deal last year, and I think a lot of teams are going to be looking at that player in Cleveland because they're still rebuilding, and Cleveland might want to move up in the draft. I think Kevin Love is another guy that everyone's going to keep an eye on because of the star value, trying to lock in someone without having to bother with the free agency bonanza here in a couple days. So I think Kevin Love's someone to watch.
We talked with Ian Begley up there in New York, and it seems like the Knicks are absolutely going to pick R.J. Barrett until they don't, because that's how crazy it is. Is it starting at 3 as far as the drama, or is it going to be at 4, you think?
I think 4, there's a really good chance that that David Griffin, the head of basketball operations for the New Orleans Pelicans, will be active in trade talks for that number 4 pick. But they're in a rebuild as well with Zion Williamson. Drew Holiday is a great veteran, but I think that's a real good culture setter for New Orleans. I think they will go young. I don't think they're going to try to swing for the fences and go make the playoffs now. But I think for a lot of people, the sleeper in the draft tonight for me is Brandon Clark out of Gonzaga. Every year we go for the young guy, the 19-year-old, the one and done. But I think people need to find the next Fred VanVleet, Draymond Green, Malcolm Brogdon, guys who played 4 years in college. Brandon Clark, Cam Johnson, Matisse Thybulle. These guys are veteran college players, and I think they could step in right away. And if you're looking for a player to be an NBA contributor right away, Brandon Clark, I think, is going to be a star.
I love that if you go to college for all 4 years, you're a veteran college player, because that is the way that we live right now. It's going to be a fun one. We're just getting started. We want to thank you for joining us here on this NBA Draft Special. We are coming back at 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific with all the latest on the rumors on tonight's draft, trades, free agency. We'll have it all covered. We will see you then. Thanks so much for logging on and streaming us. Make sure you use the hashtag NBA Draft NBC, and you can interact with all of our reporters, including Tom. Thanks so much, everyone.